One.Tel wasn't supposed to fail. By the early 2000s, it was one of Australia's largest telecommunications companies. It had millions of customers and operations across multiple countries, and it was backed by some of the most powerful names in Australian business. From the outside, it looked like a company that had already made it. And then, within weeks, it was gone. Not because the market suddenly turned, but because quietly, the people closest to the company stopped believing the story. This is Inside Corporate Australia, told through the stories that shaped it. One.Tel was founded in 1995 by Jody Rich and Brad Keeling. From the beginning, it positioned itself as something different, cheaper, faster, built for a new generation, and crucially, it attracted powerful backing. The Packer and Murdoch families invested heavily, and James Packer and Lachlan Murdoch sat on the board. Inside Australian business circles, that mattered, because companies don't just grow on cash, they grow on belief, and One.Tel became a company people believed in. The company expanded rapidly. Its customer base grew into the millions, and its operations spread across multiple countries. By the early 2000s, it had become Australia's fourth largest telecommunications company. And as the company grew, confidence grew even faster. Investors trusted it, executives backed it, and the wider market accepted the story. In that environment, growth starts to feel like proof. And that's where things begin to shift, because confidence can do something subtle. It can make a company look stable, even when it isn't. Looking back, the problems weren't dramatic. They were operational, and they built gradually. There were questions about cash flow, the basic lifeblood of any growing company. Customers reported not receiving bills consistently, which suggested the company was struggling to track its own usage. At the same time, expansion continued, even as those underlying systems were coming under pressure. These weren't headline problems, but they were signals. Signals that the business was becoming harder to track, harder to control, and harder to fully understand. Later analysis would describe the collapse as a mix of aggressive growth, poor discipline, and weak oversight. But at the time, those signals were easy to ignore, because the story still felt intact, until something changed. By early 2001, the situation began to shift. It became clear the company needed more cash, not for growth, but simply to survive. This wasn't expansion risk anymore, it was survival risk. And that is where this story turns. Because until that moment, the company still had options. After that, it had a problem the insiders could no longer ignore. Court evidence later revealed just how serious that moment felt. Lachlan Murdoch described a private meeting where James Packer broke down in tears as the collapse became inevitable. Not a boardroom announcement, not a public panic, just a small group of people realizing the story could not continue. And once that belief disappeared, the rest happened quickly. In May 2001, One.Tel entered administration. A company that had been widely trusted collapsed in a matter of days. From the outside, it looked sudden, but from the inside, it had already begun. The collapse wasn't a single event. It was the moment private doubt became public reality. After the collapse, ASIC launched a long legal case. But years later, the court found that ASIC had failed to prove its case against the company's directors, which leaves the story in a very specific place. Not as a simple case of wrongdoing, not as a clear-cut failure of one decision, but as something more subtle. A company that grew quickly, a story that everyone believed, and a system that became harder and harder to see clearly. In fast-growing companies, collapse rarely begins in public. It begins privately, when the people closest to the truth stop believing the story. Every company has a story, but not all of them are told. Some rise, some fall, all leave a mark on Australia's corporate landscape. This is Inside Corporate Australia, told through the stories that shaped it.